Welcome and good evening to Chasing the Facts. I'm Sam Chase, your host, and with us this evening is Dr. Jay Lang, Chelmsford Superintendent of Schools. Jay, glad to have you.
Thanks for having me again, Sam. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you, and we always learn a great deal, which is certainly appropriate because you are the education guy, right?
I try.
So how long have you been with us now?
So this is the start of my 11th year.
I can't believe it.
I know. I came during the summer of 2015. So we just finished 10 full school years, and this is the start of year 11.
And do you have a contract for how long?
Through 2029.
Okay.
So I still have another 4 years to
That's
go
good.
on
That's
the contract,
good.
which is good. And the school committee's been very good to work with. The last time my contract was up, the most you can do in Massachusetts is 6 years. So they had granted me a 6-year contract.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a little statutory thing.
All right.
So in
Well,
Mass.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it certainly
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
I think
it
a lot
does.
of contracts are more typically probably like 3 years or so, but for continuity purposes, there were certain positions they allowed to be longer. And so the committee and myself
Yeah.
agreed to that. So
And I'm sure it has something to do with the degree of difficulty of finding qualified candidates. I've heard that superintendents in Massachusetts are in short supply in terms of filling positions. Is that a true statement?
yeah, I think the role has become more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I think as just time evolves and different things that are happening either budgetarily or bargaining wise in different districts. It's a tough job. I mean, certainly the focus is education, but there's a lot of non-educational things that consume a lot of time, and it's become more and more challenging. I think sometimes if people are in, say, an assistant superintendent role and they really happen to be a curriculum person and they enjoy that work, they may not enjoy some of the other aspects of the superintendency. So the pool of candidates has certainly gone down. It's become a little bit more difficult to attract, and I do think if a community actually finds the right match, because it truly is about just the personality of the
Yes.
person and their background and what they bring to the job, and if it's a good match for the superintendent, it's a good match for the community, then the state allows you to kind of have that long-term relationship, because I do think it benefits the continuity for planning and programming and for succession.
Well, I noticed that the focus, rightly, and for most people, is curriculum, obviously, because it's an educational system.
Right.
But what I think, and I think most people who pay attention realize, that the school department is a very large operations.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need somebody, I think, at the helm that has good operational sense and management skills and some financial background, management background, which you have. I think you had 15 years in Lowell with a focus on finance and operations?
Yeah, I was
Before you
involved
came here?
for 20 years
20 years?
overall, but
Okay.
my last 12 years I was the deputy superintendent for
That's right.
finance and operations.
Yeah.
So I handled their budgeting and collective bargaining, food services, transportation, technology, all the kind of support departments
Right.
fell under me. So that was a very good experience. 20 years in total, 12 as the finance person.
And timing is everything, because when you came to us, we were in some financial difficulty, and so the match worked out well. But we still joke, as you know, I do some TV work over in Lowell. I mean, you've been
Right.
on the show with me a
Right.
couple times there. And the comment always in Lowell is, how did we let Jay Lang slip away from us? Well,
Yeah.
you did. Too bad. He's with us now, and we
Right.
just found out that he's here at least until the end of the decade. So there you go.
No, I've enjoyed
Yeah.
I loved my time in Lowell, but I enjoy my time in Chelmsford
Yes.
tremendously, and I actually see myself finishing my career out here. So,
Well, that's good.
Whenever that is.
That's good news, and I hope it's a long time, certainly as long as you want it to be anyway.
thank you.
So, just for the benefit of our audience, and I think it's good to remind people every once in a while how things actually work in Massachusetts, because the way we do education, public education in Massachusetts, as you know, is different than it is in other parts of the country.
Right.
You are, again, you're in charge of the school operations, but you do report directly to an elected school committee. So why don't you explain a little bit what the difference is in terms of roles, superintendent versus school committee personnel?
Sure. So for Massachusetts in particular, back in 1993 was the Education Reform Act. And when that came to be, they obviously prescribed many things within that particular act. But the role of the school committee and the role of the superintendent was more clearly defined than it had been previously. So school committees, whether they're elected, they're appointed, or whatnot in Massachusetts at this point, basically have some very important and specific charges. One of them is to hire and supervise and evaluate a superintendent. And the superintendent that they select really then oversees the day-to-day operations of the school district and keeps the community and the school committee abreast of what's happening. But the day-to-day decision-making of what happens in the buildings with staff and students is really in the purview of the superintendent as opposed to the school committee. The school committee's second role is they do all the budgeting. So they are ultimately responsible for the superintendent recommends a budget to the school committee, but the school committee has line item autonomy, and they can go through the superintendent's recommendations and say, I agree with this. I think we should have more of a focus on this particular item. We'd like to rework the budget. So they have budgeting and fiscal responsibility. Again, the superintendent
And that's a statutory thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The superintendent and administrative team make the recommendations. And again, in Chelmsford, I think we work very closely on the budgeting, not only with the school committee, but with the other town branches, FinCom, and with the manager's office. But ultimately, the school committee can decide where the funds in the district are spent. And then the third major area of emphasis for school committees is policy setting. So the school committees would set all the different policies that then, as the superintendent, I'm charged with administering and actually putting into place within the schools. So it's hiring and firing and evaluating superintendent, budget, and policy. Really the three main areas of the school committee at this point.
So, so you report directly to the school committee?
Correct.
You can
So
say
the
that. Now, do they have any other hires, or are you the only one that they hire?
I am the only kind of direct report
Okay.
or the direct person to them. In Massachusetts, also under the statute, the school committee needs to approve of my recommendation for the school business administrator,
Okay,
as well as the special education director.
but not principals?
No, not principals.
Okay, so you get to hire the principals?
I get to hire the
Okay.
principals. And I still get to interview and actually select the special ed director and the business administrator. The school committee can either just say yes or no, but if they say no, they actually have to have a rationale of why they would say no to those two hires.
Yes.
But then after they're on board, they fall into my purview.
And that makes perfect sense that it would work that way, because of course you're working with those folks on a daily basis, and they operationally they report directly to you, so
Right.
you have to be comfortable that the
Right, and they still have a relationship with the committee members, and we have a very
Sure,
open
sure.
process here. The committee members will come in to sign warrants or look at like paying of the bills for people that are watching at home. And they'll talk to Joanna Johnson-Collins, who's our director of finance, and they have a very good open relationship. They can reach out to anyone in our administrative staff and ask for information or reports or whatnot. We have a very good relationship on that front, but I am technically their direct report.
Yeah, and that's good. And I've noticed in the last several years, the school, I think we've had very good school committees the last
We have.
several years, and you don't seem to have any problems with the people understanding what their proper role is. That's not always the case in other towns, I've noticed, and we've had some issues here in Chelmsford with other boards where that's not the case. So I think we've been very lucky on the school front. It's interesting, the budgetary thing. I guess I didn't know, or if I did, I'd forgotten. You said that the school committee can actually, you make the recommendation for an overall budget, but the school committee can actually make changes and shift priorities within the budget.
They can. They have the power to.
They have the power. Do they really exercise it to any great degree, or do they pretty much follow your recommendation?
No, again, in Chelmsford, we've been very fortunate that we kind of work as a team, even in the crafting of the budget. We have an agreed upon strategic plan for the district that has certain kind of pillars that we work under, academics and social emotional learning and operations of facilities and plant management. So the school committee and the administration all kind of set the strategic plan goals and objectives for the year, and the budget really aligns our spending to meet those goals. So because I think they're part of the process and they're part of the discussion in the goal setting phase, nothing comes as a surprise when we get into the budgeting and we're trying to allocate money. Like one of our academic priorities was a focus on elementary school math math. So 2 years ago, we actually had included 2 math specialists to really focus working with teachers at the elementary school level. So that didn't come out of the blue because they were part of the discussion about that being our focus and what were we going to do to line up resources to support that. So no, again, now they could say, no, we don't want to fund that or we want to put the money somewhere else. But again, I've been fortunate here that we've worked collectively to put the strategic plan together, and then when it comes to budget, the budget aligns to the plan, and they have endorsed the budgets that have come forward. There are other communities that won't do that.
Right.
I just have been fortunate that that's been my experience.
Yeah, and I think it works well. And of course, in Massachusetts, you have to be content with whatever the allocation is that's going to come from the town, because ultimately the town manager is responsible for the overall town budget, of which the school is the largest part. So the school typically budget is maybe when you add in things that aren't specifically called out on line items, the overall allocation is over 60%. When you add back in the benefits, which is accounted for separately, so it is the largest item. But you've had pretty good success with Paul Cohen on working together and agreeing on numbers. I mean, we haven't had the friction that we had 20 years ago that we had between the school department and the town side. It seems like the level of cooperation has been pretty good. You guys get along pretty well.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know what had happened previously. I only know since when I came. But Paul's been a very good partner in supporting, I think, obviously the entire town, but supporting education. I do think we work closely on, because the school department number for the budget is significant.
Yes.
So we work closely on what the town can afford. We may not always agree 100% on everything that's maybe in the budget, and he may have a different priority than I may have. But it's been very open, honest communication as we've been developing that. I think we both try to get to a budget number that's going to benefit not only the schools but the whole town, because you don't want to have the school department be benefiting, but police or fire or DPW not be. So we try to collectively work together on that front. So again, I've been kind of blessed for 10 years with that relationship. And yeah, certainly things can be a little tighter from year to year, but we all try to come to the table and put together a budget that not only can we make work, but also keep momentum going on different projects and initiatives we have in the schools, and I'm sure similarly in the town departments.
One question I get from people for both schools and the town side is the level of the budget, the amount of money that we actually spend year over year. And I try to explain to people that a lot of that is not discretionary.
Right.
There are mandates that come. So why don't you talk a little bit about what is mandated from the state in terms of what the state requires us to spend in terms of a budget. Now I know the budget is, we spend more than that, and that's the net school spending, I think.
Right.
So can you explain how that works?
Yeah, I'd lose most of the audience if we got too detailed.
No,
into
keep it
but
simple. You probably lose me, too.
No, but on a higher level, the state does determine what they consider each community's net school spending requirement, or the minimum amount of aid that a community has to spend to support what they consider an adequate education. So they have a very complex formula that takes into consideration what Chelmsford should be spending, what Lowell should be spending, what Billerica should be spending. And that's really a minimum number, because all but I think 3 communities across the whole state last year spent at that number. Everyone exceeded that number, right, except for 3 communities. So it's really more of a matter of like how much are you exceeding that number by when we look at comparisons.
But you have to, as a town, you have to spend
you have to meet the
minimum. Okay.
Correct. You have to make the
That's where I find a lot of people have trouble with that, because I mean, people will say to me, well, gee, the town is, we don't have the same thing in the town. The state doesn't tell the town how much they have to spend, except with regard to schools, because that's part of the town's budget,
Right.
obviously. But, and I'll make up the numbers because I don't know what they are, but I mean, if the state says to Chelmsford, listen, you have to spend $70 million a year.
Right.
Okay, and that's, maybe we spend 80. Okay, I don't know, maybe we go over that. But the resident might say, well, we should only be spending 50. Well, that's your opinion, and you're certainly entitled to have it, but the fact of the matter is the town does not have any control over the minimum amount. So we have to spend at least the 70. Okay, and I think that's what people should understand, you know, because
Right.
the town doesn't have complete control over the level of money that's spent for education. We have to meet the state mandated situation. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state sets the minimum, and that is the minimum. But as I indicated, most districts spend, well in excess of the minimum, and that's where we actually kind of compare ourselves to our either sometimes neighboring communities to see, like geographically, what we're spending. The state actually comes up with what they consider like comparable
Now,
communities.
tell me why we're comparable to Newton.
I didn't come up with that one.
I saw that on the list, and
I
I
know.
said, I don't think so.
Well, and again, they had
Yeah.
Burlington was one of our comps
Yeah.
a couple of years back, and I don't really see us comparable
No.
to Burlington. But again, it's just all formula based.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on, and we have nothing to do with it. That's the other thing. Like, I don't get to pick our comps.
No, they tell you.
DESE is basically taking a look at your 10 most comparable districts
Mm-hmm.
statewide based on your enrollment, your school configuration, like your grade level configuration.
Mm-hmm.
Our elementary school is a K to 4. We have middle schools, say 5 to 8. The high school is 9 to 12. They want to make sure that they're comparing somewhat apples to apples when they're doing that. They take a look at the demographic of the population, the low income percentage of students, the percentage of special education students, the percentage of EL students, English language learner students. So they actually figure out what are your 10 most comparable districts, and then they use those basically to just benchmark spending and a whole bunch of other statistics. And what we use it for is like when Newton popped into the list again. I don't think Newton's our comp.
No.
From time to time, like an Andover will pop into the list. I truly don't think we're an Andover comp when it comes to community wealth and things.
You
like
might as
that.
well add in Concord if you're going to do that.
Well,
right?
that, but like say you have a North Andover, right? North Andover will pop into the list, and I think North Andover is
that's closer. That's
fairer
closer.
comp,
Yeah, yeah.
But what we take a look at is, what are our teacher salaries compared to our comp districts? Because again, we need to be competitive in Chelmsford to say what a North Andover is paying, because it's a pretty close geography. Our student-teacher ratios, again, our overall enrollments, the amount of money we're spending on in-district students, the amount of money that we're spending on out-of-district students. So there's a whole bunch of different factors that kind of go into that. And again, the purpose, I think, is more of just a benchmark to kind of figure out, is what you're spending, is it appropriate? Is it arguably too much? Is it arguably too less? And that's what those figures are for.
And every comparison I've seen, and I've been looking at these numbers for almost 30 years now,
Right.
in one capacity or another, and Chelmsford is always well within the range of what I call reasonableness in terms
Right.
of spending. So I would be concerned if Chelmsford were spending, if we were in the top 10 communities of spending, because that's not where Chelmsford is demographically in
Right.
terms of income and so forth.
Right.
But I think, I look at the state numbers, and I think the Chelmsford taxpayer gets a pretty good bang for his buck.
I
Okay,
agree with you.
in terms of what other communities are spending on education.
Right. Well, and can I just jump in
Yeah,
for
go
a
ahead.
second? So there's that piece, and again, we were always kind of like looking for the median. We're kind of looking to be in the middle.
Yes, and you always say that in your presentations.
But
Yeah.
then performance-wise, we're outperforming. our
Exactly.
peers. So,
Exactly
we
right.
may not be spending, as much as some of our top districts are, even comp-wise, but our performance is certainly at the top. So we may be spending in the middle, but top third performance-wise. And that's something that we, I think, pride ourselves with as a community.
That's and you have to put that directly on your organization and your staff.
The staff are phenomenal.
The staff is phenomenal. In full disclosure, my wife taught elementary school here in Chelmsford for 39 years. I retired from McCarthy as a 5th grade teacher, and so I got to know a lot of the teaching staff.
Right.
And the things that they would do to go, what I would say, above and beyond what the requirements are. And they were just giving 120% most of the time.
Right.
And it's good that that happens, but it's dangerous to plan your operation based on the fact that your staff's going to give 120% all the
Right.
time, because there will come a time when that's not the case,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right. We've been very fortunate on that front. It's
Yes.
amazing how many of our teachers actually are Chelmsford residents or
Yes.
former residents. You know, they had a great experience in the school system. They go off to college, they get educated, they want to come back to be a teacher, and they do so. So, no, but teaching staff has been excellent. Our support staff
Yes.
is very local. You know, that's basically a lot of folks from Chelmsford that are our paraeducators, and they might work in our food department. We have a lot of administrators. So all in all, I'm very pleased with the staff. It's a very cohesive staff. We don't see a lot of staff turnover, which is positive, I think, for the community.
I think so. Absolutely correct. One of the things I did want to ask you about was the bus program, and I
Yeah.
know we have a little bit of a problem because you don't have a great selection in vendors.
Statewide.
Is it pretty much single source? Is that what you're up against, or?
Yeah, so we have two different types of transportation. So we have like the big yellow bus. We consider that just the general education transportation. And then we have special education or specialized transportation. So those would be like the smaller yellow buses.
Okay.
Those would be like 70 vans that we might have transporting kids either in district or maybe to some of our out-of-district schools. And yeah, just the number of providers has significantly decreased over the years. And a couple of the bigger companies have kind of bought up some of the smaller mom and pop shops. And so the competition just really isn't there globally for that.
Right.
I think the other thing that has impacted the transportation business was particularly during COVID.
Yes.
Where, you know, a lot of, obviously schools weren't in existence. We weren't in
Right.
person for a good year and a half. Bus drivers still had to work and had to make a living. And to drive a big yellow bus, you have to have a 7D license. So if you have a 7D license, you can then go also drive a truck, or you can
Right.
go, you know, work somewhere else. And sometimes the wages are actually more competitive. And I'll be honest with you, being a school bus driver is a very difficult job. You know,
Oh,
it's-
yes.
It's one person who's focused on driving and keeping their eyes on the road and keeping everyone, the 50 kids behind them, safe. And I'll tell you, the morning runs are a little bit more subdued because everyone's a little tired. But the afternoon runs, when there's a little bit more rambunctiousness on the buses, because they're kids, right? They're excited to be out of school and they're on their way home. It can be a challenge. So it is a challenging job for staff. Yes, we don't have the competition I think we'd want. That more impacts us financially when we're going out to bid on contracts. If you only have, you know, potentially one or two bidders for a contract,
Right.
then financially, that's where some of our budget issues have come, because that's a cost that's out of our control. You know, we have to provide transportation by law to a certain group of students based on where they live in proximity to the schools.
2 miles, isn't it?
Anyone over 2 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, we actually also, to defray some of the costs, because we would have extra seats on the bus if we just limited it to the people 2 miles over, we charge a nominal fee and we allow others to drive on the bus. That helps us kind of offset the cost a little bit. But in a situation where you're going out to bid and you only have, say, one bid that comes in, you're beholden to whoever is actually providing that bid. So that's like an example, you're talking earlier about budget costs that are kind of out of our control. That's a little out of our control.
Right. I'm shocked at the number of people that drive their kids to school and pick up their kids, because I'm doing it for my grandchildren, and we do it primarily because the kids have activities after school.
Yeah.
And if they were taking the bus, you know, where the school is and where they live, they wouldn't get home in time to get their activities. So I suspect that's the reason why a lot of people are picking up their kids. I just
Particularly in the afternoon. I mean,
Yeah.
the schedules are tough because the kids these days are so programmed.
well, that's
that
it.
once they're out of school, they're doing an activity or a club or
Yeah.
a sport or a drama or a dance.
I was,
it's a challenge.
I was a little nervous because this year I have to pick up at McCarthy, and then I have to swing over to Parker. Right? And I thought, oh, this is going to be awful because of the buses. But you know what?
Hasn't been too bad.
They manage it pretty well. I was shocked at how quickly they get the buses out.
Yeah.
And they always have a police officer.
Right.
He's probably the resource officer,
He is the
I would
resource
guess,
officer, right.
that actually comes out and directs the traffic, which is
Yeah.
great. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't get out of there. So
Right.
it works out well. I did want to ask you about the security arrangements. Now I come into the building today, and we have a new security alcove.
Yeah.
So, and I assume that's going to be in every school.
It is. So actually, a couple of years back, we invested at the high school. That was our first school that we built a security vestibule, they call it, or an alcove. But it's basically just a secure area to vet all the different people who are coming into the building through. You'd be amazed if you're in a school during the day, just how many things are like dropped off if a parent would come in to drop off a book or a missed lunch and things like that. We just want to cut down on the amount of traffic that's in the building that's non-school related during the school day, and also provide a layer of security and kind of safety for anyone who does get into the school and then have access to the building.
Well, without that, you only have one chance, which is one door. So the way this is structured, you come in and you're in a holding area with a second door actually going into the building.
Correct.
So you get another chance at containing somebody with this system that you didn't have before.
Well, before, yes, school by school it was a little different, but
Right.
you used to get buzzed in and then you would just come into the office.
Right.
Now you actually get buzzed in and you're in a little bit of a
You're in a
containment
holding area, right?
And you actually would run your ID because
Yep.
we do a background check on you. You're then issued a badge if you're going to come into the building. And then if you pass muster, then you get buzzed into the second door. So then a staff member would come greet you and bring you into the building.
I think that's a wonderful system.
Yeah, it's worked out well. So
I'm
we
glad to
actually
see
just
that.
added that to the other 5 schools this summer.
Yep, so I'm just so happy to see that, and I'm sure that gives people a very comfortable feeling, adding to that.
Yeah, that was one of our
security.
facility enhancements.
So another question I have on the national front, of course we're seeing what's happening at the national level with education, and I guess the stated intent of the administration is ultimately to eliminate or severely reduce the scope of the Federal Department of Education, which actually has only been in existence for 45 years.
Right.
Before that, it was part of health, education, and welfare. I
Right.
mean, it did exist, but in a much smaller scope. So let's assume the worst and say, well, they succeed in eliminating the DOE or drastically reducing. So what is your anticipation of that? How would you address that issue?
I don't know, so I'll throw that out there because
That's an honest
It's
answer.
an honest answer. We just don't know what's actually happening or when it's happening or whatnot. The most important thing to us is trying to figure out exactly if it were dismantled. The Department of Education obviously serves a function, and where are all those different pieces of work that they're doing going to end up going? So I would assume there are different elements that would get shifted off to different departments. And in the end, for us, if it's a reporting mechanism or really it's a financial, we receive many like entitlement grants, we receive some competitive grants. So if those funds are still coming to us, but they're coming from a different branch or a different department, that would be something that we could work through.
So that might be a distinction without a difference almost.
It could be,
Yeah.
but we just don't know yet. So as of right now, it hasn't impacted us. The grant money, both entitlement and competitive, that we're supposed to be receiving, we are receiving, at least for the current fiscal year. And it's going to be something that we're just going to watch going forward to figure out, is the funding still going to come? Is it going to come from a different department? What is the reporting requirements? Are they going to be the same? Are they going to be different? So it's still a little bit of a work in progress, but we're not impacted right now by the changes at the federal level.
Well, and actually, I'll put a little positive spin on it, perhaps, although it would be amazing if it happened because we are talking about government after all. If you eliminated the operational aspects of the DOE, that's a lot of money that's spent just to maintain the bureaucracy. Those funds might be freed up and available to support actual education programs. So that would be, if they do that, that would be nice if that could happen. But as you said, and thank you for your honesty,
we don't know where it's
nobody
going.
knows. I don't
Right.
think anybody knows. So about a minute and a little over a minute, talk about the potential building project. That's
In a minute.
yeah.
So here's what we're doing. So I guess
Yep.
very exciting news for you. So we have our own as project manager on board, left
Good.
field. So they've hit the ground running. And just this past Tuesday, we had the designer selection meeting with the MSBA, and we selected our designer for the project. So AI3 is going to be the design firm that works with us on this project. We have a school building committee meeting a week from Thursday, or a week from today actually, where AI3 and left field will be there to do a little presentation for us. They're going to start to lay out a whole map for the fall and community visioning sessions and input sessions. So the work on the new Parker Middle School project is going to begin in about a week's time. So there'll be much more about that. I'd love to come back sometime.
Oh,
and do a
well, don't
show
worry about
dedicated
that.
to just that.
Right.
But no, a lot of exciting stuff is coming. Those are the two big elements to get off the ground. And this whole school year, we're going to be focused on working on the new Parker Middle School project.
Well, that's great. And when that does come to fruition and we start getting shovels in the ground, we're looking at maybe, what, 4 or 5 years from now?
Yeah, ideally at this point, we're looking at probably the 2030, 31 school
Okay,
year.
that's good.
So we're about 5 years off,
Good, very good.
5 years from today.
Jay, time goes fast. We're out of time. Again, thank you very much for coming, and we definitely will have you back, especially to talk more about the school project.
Thank you for having me. I
Okay,
always appreciate it.
very welcome.